In this video, we'll take a look at the new V-Ray 7 Update 2. For this, we will try out various new features on real-world examples and then see how those can help to speed up our workflow. So V-Ray 7 Update 2 has been released for 3ds Max, and I thought in this video we're gonna go through some of the most important features and then check out how we can use them. So in your renderings, oftentimes when you include people, the result can look quite frustrating because maybe those assets, they are not really very high quality. They don't really have a very complex shading setup and so on to make them really look realistic. So you might end up in situations where you have a nice looking environment, but it's kind of ruined by some very ugly or dead looking people models, like in this case in here. And that's exactly the problem that the AI enhancer tries to solve. So in order to enable it, you need to go in your render elements and then just add this V-Ray enhance data render element. And once that's in there, you can just start a rendering. So once your rendering is completed, you can see there is a new button up here. And once you click this, you then have the option to upload everything here to the cloud. Let's do that now. And then you can also just open it in the cloud. And then you can see all your previously uploaded image and the most recent one here on the very left-hand side. Let's click that. And now down here, we have the option to use the enhance button. Let's also click that now. After a short waiting time, you can see the enhanced result. You can see that now, especially the face here, of course, looks much more realistic. We can compare both versions here by just pressing on this button. Then you have this handy slider in here where you can basically just see here on the left-hand side our original rendering and then what the AI enhancer made out of it. So you can see they integrated this rather conservatively. It really just touches your face and also vegetation. So trees and bushes and so on are going to look much nicer, but it pretty much does leave everything else untouched with the exception of upscaling. So if we zoom in here, you can see that it also increases the resolution of your image, but it doesn't really change anything about the look. So I think this is quite nice. And of course, sometimes if you have this out of focus areas, the AI enhancer is going to have a little bit harder time. So you can see that it will sharpen those parts in here. So you might get varying results and you might want to mask then out certain areas in Photoshop additionally, but you can get a quite nice result in here. What I think is a little bit of a pity is that it doesn't really seem to touch the hairs. So the hairs, they still have this very CG-ish look in here. And if they would be touched in a similar way like the face would be, then I think this picture would look, of course, even more realistic. So here we have another example. You can see this looks quite horrible out of the box. Let's see what the AI enhancer is doing out of this. Let's just zoom into the faces. And you can see for this guy here, it actually is doing quite a good job. It even seems to touch his hair a little bit. For this woman, I think the result is a little bit worse because I think also the rendering itself just looked much lower quality. So as said, you can get some varying results, but of course this result here still looks much better than this result. Let's check out what it does to the leaves here. And I think you can see this really increases here the quality of your leaves. It adds these kind of small veins in here. And I think this is quite a nice result in this case. Also, let's check here the texture on the wall. And I think this is really, really impressive that it really just upscales the whole result without really touching anything. So it really leaves your 3D rendering completely how it was, with the exception of just making it more sharp and more crisp. So I think this, in this case here, is quite usable then. Now you also have access to an AI material creator, and this is accessible here through 𝐘𝐨𝐿. So if you just head on in the material section, then here at the bottom you can find this AI material generator. Let's just generate something. So now it opens the AI material generator. You can see it's still in beta, and initially I was also getting pretty horrible results, but I think by now I kind of understood how it works. So the idea is that you upload a photo and it will then generate you a diffuse, normal and roughness map and build a simple material for you. But in order to compare the results, I thought it's a better idea to first go here to a PBR website and just download a simple albedo, normal and roughness map and first build a shader to compare our result to. So now I'll quickly build this material here by myself using the maps that I just downloaded from the PBR website. You can see we have, of course, a nice normal map. We have some nice specular and reflection. And then also we have our diffuse map that shows up in here. And now I want to use the AI material generator to create a very similar looking material and then compare both of them. So for this, I just added a plane here in front of the camera to just put this texture on top of it. This is now illuminated here with my scene lighting. And this would be kind of a similar situation where you just feed a picture that you took from somewhere. And initially I was getting really horrible results because I just decided to give it this map here. So I just downloaded an albedo map from a PBR website. But the problem with this map is that it doesn't really give the AI enhancer a lot of information to understand how this material here is set up. That's why I was getting really horrible results. So you need to feed it some kind of image that has some lighting, that has some kind of reflections, so it can understand, okay, what are the roughness values, what are the normal map values, and so on. So let's just save out this image here and then just feed this into the AI generator and see what kind of material we will get out from this. So for this, we just upload an image here. You can see this one is just a simple JPEG. Let me just open this. And then it's already uploaded and we can now generate here our different maps. So now our material is finished. We can press here the download button and then we can just save this here as, for example, a cracked earth. And we'll download everything and then we can just put it in our material editor. Now let's remove my plane here so that we can get back our trusted shading dummy, and I will now apply this new material to it. And then this here would be the result of our AI generated material just from using a single JPEG as an input. You can see if we check, for example, the normal map, we also have some nice normal map. It also generated here a diffuse map. And it also added some kind of specular and reflection. So let's see how this compares now with our original shading. And the version A here on the left-hand side would be our original PBR material. And the one here on the right-hand side would be our new shader. And let's just see how they basically differentiate. You can see that they don't really look exactly identical. And I think the main reason for that is that here in the diffuse map, you can see here on the right hand side, the AI generated version here still has much more of the original scene lighting here baked inside. And this, of course, in the perfectly generated PBR material, we don't really have this kind of issue. We have just simple colors. And then everything here is generated using the maps. For example, a normal map. I think they look kind of similar, but you can see that also it's not exactly the same. We have, of course, here a little bit better result with the PBR material here, but I'll just do this as a comparison. So here again, you can see the PBR material and the AI generated material. And you can decide for yourself which one here looks better for you. So again, the results that you will get from the AI material generator heavily depend on the kind of data that you feed into it. And if you just have, for example, a simple diffuse map, you're missing all of the other maps. It won't be enough to feed a simple diffuse map into the AI material generator because it won't be able to extract all of the necessary data. On the other hand, if you just upload a photo of a surface from the real world, this will contain already all of the important information that the AI material generator will need to extract the different maps from, and you will probably get some much nicer results using this way. So if you're a regular follower of my content, you might have seen my tutorial on how to build a custom HDRI dome setup in V-Ray, and one that's vastly superior to V-Ray's native built-in tools. And in this video, I showed various benefits, such as that you're able to view your entire environment directly in your native viewport in real time. You can generate richer, more realistic shadows that help your 3D objects integrate much better into the environment. You can add shading effects to the floor plane, such as bump mapping or reflections. And you can even enable advanced effects like wetness or water puddles. So while the end result looks far better than what the built-in tools can offer, it doesn't come entirely without drawbacks. For example, the setup process is quite slow and complex. Even for experienced users, it takes around 30 minutes to build, and there are countless ways things can go wrong. It's quite difficult to control. Many settings are buried deep inside the node graph and spread across multiple shaders. And most importantly, if you want to try out different HDRIs, you often have to redo parts of the setup, matching the floor plane again, adjusting shaders. All of this can really slow down your workflow. After the video, I was contacted by Phil from Flag Visuals, and together we came up with the idea to turn the entire workflow into a plugin that eliminates all of these drawbacks. And after months of development, we created something that not only automates the entire process, but also adds a lot more functionality on top of it. Our tool is called DomeMaker, and it's available right now. It will help you speed up your workflow, create breathtaking renderings, and can be used in a wide variety of scenarios. So make sure to check it out. And now back to the video. So now the V-Ray Sun and Sky system also support nighttime skies. That's what we're going to be checking out in this scene in here. For this scene, I set up the whole sky here using the V-Ray Sun and Sky system. You can see if I move my sun around, I can define the position of the sun and the shadows and so on. So in order to enable nighttime skies, let's just press this button here to enable this. And then we have to move our sun below the horizon. And it becomes completely black now. But the reason for this is that our camera is set up for daylight exposure. So let's take here our camera. And at the moment you can see my target exposure value is set to 15. Let's put this all the way to 1 for now. And now you can see we have some stars which are showing up in here. Let me just select the light and we can move this up a little bit to get a little bit of the horizon glow here. Yeah, I think something like this looks nice. And you can see we have some nice stars here in our sky already. So now you have different settings in here. Let's just go in and first of all, make the size here bigger. You can see then those stars here, they become much bigger because it would be way too big for a scene like this, but the option is there. You can also play here with the size difference. Then like this, some of the stars here are quite big while some others remain small. I will just put this here back to the default values because I think like this it looks most natural. I hope it also appears correct in the YouTube compression. You can see it has this kind of like colorful appearance which is realistic, but probably I would wish there would be another option in here where you can make them all in a single color and not have this kind of like different color values in here, but somehow I didn't really find any option for that. You can also increase the brightness here, of course. So then those would be much more visible. And the intensity multiplier is basically being used to illuminate your scene with these stars. So let's increase this. You can see we have some kind of like brightness now appearing here on our landscape. Of course, in the scene here, it wouldn't really make sense, but the option is there. Let's put this back to 1 again. And now we also have the option to have a Milky Way. At the moment here, the multiplier is set to 5. Let's increase this to 15. And you can see we have some nice Milky Way showing up in here. And you can define the position by just using these sliders in here. For example, let's use a latitude of 70, longitude of 0. And you can define here the position of your Milky Way. I think now let's go down with the intensity here again, maybe like 10 or something like 7.5 to just have it slightly visible. We can also move up our sun a little bit more so we get a little bit more brightness here going on. And I think like this, it looks already quite nice as you can see in here. Additionally, you have the option to enable a moon. So let's do that. And now we have some moon appearing here. You can also edit this in the viewport and then just freely define the position of the moon. Let's move that to here, for example. And you can see there's even some kind of moon texture here. At the moment, I think the colors look wrong. Let's just make it a little bit bluish by just increasing here our saturation. For example, something like this in here. And like this, I think the moon now looks much nicer. We can also play with the brightness. Let's make it a bit brighter or not quite that bright. So we still get a little bit of the feeling of these kind of textures here in the moon. And yeah, I think like this, it looks fine. We can also play, of course, here with our intensity and glow options. Let's just put here the glow multiplier to 5. And you can get this very strong glow effect here on the moon. I think something like this maybe looks fine. And let's choose a different size, for example, 10, and the brightness multiplier of 0.5. And yeah, I think like this, it looks a bit more natural. What we also can do is to play here with our moon phase. So let's choose, for example, here a moon phase of 45. And you can see you will start to get this kind of dark side of the moon. Let's increase that a little bit further. And we have this nice shadow that appears here. Let's play with the rotation. And you can get exactly the kind of look that you want to. I think in our case, rotation of 0 looks better. Yeah, and I think like this, you can easily make a very nice and a little bit cheesy looking image using the new night sky features of the physical sun and sky system. The V-Ray MultiSubTexture got some nice updates, and this I'm going to show you in this scene in here. So we have this crowd of people, and I want to randomize here the shirt colors. And at the moment I go by face material ID. The result is that we don't really get true randomizations. For example, the yellow shirt will always be on the guy that has here his arms pointed out. The red shirt will always be on the guy who has his arms here attached to his hip and so on. So I really want to randomize this. And this I can just do by going here to this random option. Now we have much nicer randomizations. For example, we have one time this guy wearing here a yellow shirt and then the same guy wearing a green shirt. So it's really randomizing this now across all of our models. But what also happens when we go to the random mode is that we have now this probability option here, and that is a new feature. So with this probability option, we can define the amount here, in this case of, for example, red shirts, green shirts, and so on. At the moment, all of those values here are at 100. So that means they will all be mixed at the same amount. That's why we have the same amount here roughly for these different shirt colors. But let's say, for example, we want to make much less red shirts. So we just go here and just lower the probability value. And now you can see we have only roughly a quarter of the red shirts that we had before. Let's do the same here with the green shirts, but let's make this very little. So you can see now I put this here to a value of 5. So we only have very, very few of those green shirts. And like this, you can really define the exact amount here you want to mix. So I think this is quite a nice and handy feature. Let's increase this here back to 100 again. And then there's also another new feature. For this, I first want to place different patterns here on those shirts. And I prepared already 4 different patterns. Let me just enable those. And you can see that now we have this kind of like funky looking shirts in here. And the new option is this mapping source. So inside here, we can go and we can add a new V-Ray triplanar texture, for example. And you can see everything is updated. Let me just increase that to maybe a value of 10. And you can see it controls basically all of the texture which are connected to our MultiSubTexture, and we can all define them here through this one single node. Let's make this a bit bigger again. And like this, you don't need to go in and basically place a separate V-Ray triplanar texture in all of those different pattern textures. It's enough to just define here this single mapping source, and then this will be transferred to all of the connected textures in here. You can also use a UVW randomizer node, for example. So anything that would pipe into a mapping source is supported. So since we're here in the randomize mode, we can even finish this off by randomizing this even further by randomizing the U. So let's increase here the U randomization. You can see that we now have completely random U shifts appearing here as well. We can do the same for the saturation and then also play with the gamma a little bit. And like this, you can see we're able to really completely have perfectly unique shirts here for all of our actors. And this was quite easy using here the V-Ray MultiSubTexture with these new additional options. So here we have a Gaussian Splat, and in update 2, Gaussian Splats now support clipping mask. That means we can easily replace, for example, the building here from the Gaussian Splat with our 3D building. And for this, we just need to build here a simple geometry like I prepared already using this cube in here. And now in our Gaussian Splat, we can just put a simple V-Ray distance texture, open our material editor, just drag this here as an instance. And now we want to select the box which we created. You can see something is happening already. I just want to go in and reduce the distance here to 0. So we don't really have some blending happening. And then we need to separate our inside and make this completely solid. And now we can just take here our cube and place that where we want. And you can see we can remove parts here of the building or even the entire building, as you can see in here. You can then, for example, add here a own building that you just take as a 3D model and just keep everything else from the Gaussian Splat so that your 3D model seamlessly integrates here with the environment. We can also combine multiple clippings. So here in the distance, you can see, for example, some low resolution part of our Gaussian splat. Let's say we want to remove that. So for this, let's zoom out. And I created here another cylinder, quite big cylinder here in the scene. And we can combine now 2 different clippings. For this, let's just go inside, put a V-Ray comp texture here as the base. And let's just put the operator here to multiply. And let's just take our existing map as a copy. But of course, here we don't want to take our box. Let's remove our box. Let's pick our cylinder. And you can see nothing happened because we have to remove those 2 checkboxes. Then just make our outside here separate. And now once we did this, you can see that now here using our V-Ray comp texture, we can basically clip everything away that's outside of the cylinder. And if we take our box, let's just zoom inside and let's hide here our building. We can see that our existing building from the Gaussian splat is still missing. We can bring it back. And like this, we easily combined here 2 different clipping planes, one for the building and one for our further away leftover parts from the Gaussian splat. And we can easily then just customize our Gaussian splat here directly in V-Ray without having to go to an external software to remove, for example, certain elements from it. So in 𝐘𝐨𝐬, you now have the option to cluster scattered objects together. So here I prepared 3 different grass objects, and just to make it more easy to see, they all have different color. I have some normal green grass, this kind of purple grass, and this kind of bluish grass. At the moment, they are all just scattered completely evenly here on the surface. But now inside here, you can see under the surface scattering tab, there's now the option to define clusters. So here we can define a different seed. And this way get a completely new pattern, as you can see, or we can choose a different size. So let's say we want to make our clusters bigger. You can easily change that, or you want to make them smaller again. Then this, of course, is also possible. We can make it now bigger again. And then the other values, I think, are kind of self-explaining. Let's just play here with this edge blend value. Let's increase this, for example. And as you can see, they are still clustering together, but we have this nice transition that's happening now. We don't really have these kind of isolated islands anymore. Let's see what this diversity value here does. And this basically just starts to mix in some other instances in those clusters so that you don't have these complete isolated clusters anymore, but it looks way more natural now. So I think this summarizes everything about clustering. The other new function is that there's this option now to distribute, to cluster them based on a bitmap. That's what we're gonna check now. So once I enable here this instance to color map, you can see that now for our different grass, we have access to this instance color. And here I basically defined 3 different instance colors already. And now we can load a texture map inside here that basically defines how we want to cluster our different elements. So in Photoshop, I prepared this simple map, and as you can see, it contains the 3 different colors, our red, green, and yellow. And now I will use this map here as an instance to pipe that into our instance color to map node. And now you can see this map is being used for defining our clustering. And I think you can get some quite nice results using this here. So those were for me some of the most important changes in V-Ray 7 Update 2. Of course, there's much more, and you can find a full list of all of the changes and additions here on the website. If you want to support my channel, you can do so by joining my Patreon, get access to all of my scene files, and also watch a whole course on car rendering. So check that out if that's interesting for you. Otherwise, see you next tutorial. Take care and see you soon.